So in part one, we built an Express server. We used the Express router to build routes, and those routes fire off a function. That function brings in a MySQL connection and runs a query, and this is the result of that query. And we're going to pick up right where we left off here. This is the result of our query, and you can see here there's some information here that is not our two posts. We're going to get rid of that. So first we're going to jump over to where we're getting those results. And the first thing we're going to do is when we look at those results, we got to recognize that, for example, if we look here very closely, we can see it's an array of an array with an object. That object goes, there's one entry, and there's the second entry, and then it ends in the array that's on the inside there. And then we have a second array with all this other information, which goes all the way down to the bottom. And then we have our outside array. So what we want to do is grab this first entry from here to here. So we see that this section here is inside of an array. So what we're going to do is say let rows equals result 0. And that grabs this selected part. Now we have an array of objects that we can work with. So the first thing we want to do is say if our rows, and granted this is an array, dot length is greater than 0, then we have results. And we can return our rows. Otherwise, we're going to throw a new error that says no rows returned. We're going to get rid of this send because we're not going to send it. So notice though, here this is our query. This is the beginning of our promise chain, and whatever results are returned from that, from this connection, which is all this data we see, that gets passed in here as result. So we're doing this block of code after this one is completed. That's the benefit of the promise chain. We do this, and it forces it to finish and return data before we move on to the next thing. So now that we've isolated our rows or thrown an error, we can do another dot then. We pass it another function. If this throws an error, it won't execute the next thing in the chain. We're going to do a catch at the bottom, and I'll explain that when we get there. But if we do return rows, then we have our rows coming in here. You can call this whatever you want. I like to just call everything results or res or r, but we'll call it rows for now. Now, all I want to do here, because I'm sorry for the noise, all we're going to do here is return all the rows. So I want those rows to be returned with the res.send or whatever. So there is another function on the response object here that's just called res.json. And we can just pass our rows here. Nope. Just like that. And granted, we don't have to do this promise chain. We just copy this up and put it here if we wanted. We could do that. But I like showing separation of concern. So to me, this is nice because most of the time I'm always going to check my results before I do anything with them. So this is like copy and paste. I don't have to change it in the future when I reference this. I can just copy, this block of code from an existing API file. And I can just kind of use this as a template. But I understand what the pieces are. Count. It's a if results, return the rows, otherwise throw error. And here, this res.json automatically converts our rows array into a stringified JSON object, and that JSON object gets returned to the user. And then to finish off our chain, we have two more things. One is a .catch, and the .catch, if an error is thrown, which would be this error, this E will contain our error message. And if we throw an error, it'll skip this. It won't send it to the user. It'll just jump down. If there's any error anywhere in our promise chain, it'll jump down to this catch section. And we can say if e dot, I think it's message, equals no rows returned. Oh, I'm sorry, I did this wrong here. This is an arrow function. That's better. Just like those, it's just a callback function. So the error gets passed in. If e.message equals no rows returned, then we can return something like res.status 404. 404 probably isn't the appropriate error code, but we'll use it for now. We'll say send e.message. I think actually 404 would be good. Else, if there's any other error, that maybe an error happens somewhere else here with the database connection or something, we're going to just have a generic error that says return res.status 500 internal server error. And I'm sorry, this is just send status. We're not going to send any other message with it. And okay, so as we're doing our promise chains, we can throw errors under certain conditions. Anything that basically, like, if you're not getting your data for any reason, or something's going wrong for any reason, you can throw a custom error. And if that error is thrown, you can add to this chain of if-else statements and say, if the message is this, do this. If it's this, do this. In this case, if I'm querying for posts, it'll give me a 404 and it'll tell me no rows returned. In my front end, in React, I'll be able to say if the status is 404, then I know I didn't get my data. I know I have an error, and I can respond to that accordingly. So that's pretty cool. And if there's any other error, we send a 500, and we'll handle that in React as well. Okay, so that's the end of our catch. And then the final thing is we're going to use this thing called finally. And the last thing we want to do, whether there's an error or not, whether it sends this or not, whether we have a catch or not, the last thing we're going to do is connection.release. And this releases the MySQL connection. And there's the end of that and the end of that. What happened here? I don't think we need that. I think my VS Code did that somehow. So let's just show you the whole code here. Bring in our promise chain, module.exports function, a request, and a response object. We bring in our MySQL connection from app.locals. We use that connection object to get a connection to the database. We then use this connection inside of a promise chain from callback to run our query. I'm going to uppercase this just because that's nice. There's our query. Then we take our results. We check that we got results or throw a new error. If we have results, we send them to the browser. Otherwise, we handle the error. And no matter what happens, finally, we release our database connection. Now when we go over here and we refresh, we see just the two pieces of data that we want. So this is the basic template of an API. Let's get rid of these things for now. Let's get rid of that. We'll do some cleanup here. We'll put this up here. Yeah, I think that's good. So let's review for a second, just so we can understand the parts here. This page is where all of our server HTTP kind of stuff is handling. This is where we would do our WebSockets. This is where we would bring in any other database connections, because you can also connect to Postgres, you can connect to Redis, you can connect to MongoDB. Any number of connections can be brought in. Those connections can all be added to app.locals. They can all be passed down through any number of routes or routers. You can basically copy what we've done here and do different routes at different URLs, or the same route at different URLs, whatever you might want to do. When we hit our API, this is our router, we can copy this and basically make it whatever we want. And so if you have multiple routes to make, you can do that. Gotta message the girlfriend. All right. So we don't need other anymore. We'll leave this one and we'll leave this one. And these are short enough that I do kind of like to put them on the same line, personally. And just kind of group things. We might go through here and comment these at some point, but for now, I think I've talked through them. I think that's fine. We have our router. If we just go API, we get a 404. Sorry, there's an error. We could change this to, I don't know, you could just say, you could just have like a, get/posts. Then if you're doing backend and another developer is doing front end, we could just make a list of things, get, we could say, put/posts. Some kind of instructions here so that, we could do pre-tag maybe. We can send HTML, raw HTML here. You wouldn't want to get too fancy with it. You might build out another function that generates this text and you just pass it here and something like that to make this a little nicer. You don't all want it all here. And that's kind of the beauty of JavaScript. You can put things wherever you want, import them and export them however you want so that things are organized. And organization is very important because that's how a developer comes in and can find what they're looking for within a reasonable amount of time. Hopefully not so abstracted and convoluted that you can't find things, but within reason. So at this point, we have posts. We might also have another router off of this router. For example, we could have a login. And instead of API route, well, no, we'll leave it in API routes, but we could do a /login. And we do just login/. And we can make a new folder called login. And we can copy our posts file and drop it into login. And here we can do some different things. And we can see here if we do /posts, what happened? I did something wrong. That's okay. As soon as we see an error, we want to stop and fix it. We don't want to keep going because the more changes we make, the more we're unsure of where our error happened. Now, this needs to be index. To reference it like that needs to be called index. So here, login is not a file that exists. There's no JS file called login, but it sees there's a login folder, and so it'll automatically go into that folder and check, does an index.js exist? And if so, it'll use that. So now things are working again. We refresh, there's our posts. We should be able to say login and also get the same content. So that's awesome. So that works. We'll leave this commented for now. But after we get our React interface up and going, then we're going to switch over and do, we'll do a login page. So we're going to do some content, then we'll make a login page, and maybe we'll make an admin section or something. It's going to get a little tricky as we build onto this. You can't keep it all in your head. So, I want to do this in a modular way so that you can see each of the steps involved. I'm just going to delete that. And I'm not even going to comment it out. I'm just going to delete it. Keep it clean. So this is a basic API. There's our four pieces, our four basic pieces. There's our server with our routes. We have our MySQL connection, which is exported. We attach that to app.locals. It gets automatically passed down to our routes. We run our server. Our router lists off all of our routes. One route goes to our post file where we make our query and return data. Okay, so now we're going to switch over and do React. And a lot of this I haven't done in a long time, so it might have some errors, but we're going to try to do this together. And we're going to start by npm install React. And we're gonna npm install webpack. Oops. I like sometimes to look at these as they're going. React, MySQL, Express, Bluebird. There's webpack. We might want some other things. I'm not really sure yet. When we run into errors, we'll address them. And hopefully you'll understand when we address them what the problem is and how we solve it. Some of these things you just gotta know to know, and once you know, you know. Other things, you don't gotta know. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make a new folder for my React project. And most of these tutorials you find, they're gonna say, well, let's start off by creating a Create React app. And that can work, but it's confusing for beginners because Create React app comes with Webpack, comes with a server, comes with all this pre-configured stuff that's hidden away. And so it's very confusing as to what is what and why. So this will also help me figure out what I need to install here. So we're going to create a file here, and we'll just call this index.jsx. And we're going to import React from React. We're going to import React DOM from React DOM. And we're going to go here and say npm install React DOM. And we're going to create another folder in here called source. And in source, we're going to create a React file. We'll just call it main for now. I don't know what to call it. Here's our index, again, back to our old file. Now, what's really important here is that when you go to view your React page in the browser, the browser needs to load an HTML document, and then that document needs to pull in our JavaScript bundle that has all of our React front-end stuff. We're going to build that with Webpack. And so we kind of need to do these things a little bit at a time, but we're going to start here so you see how they glue together. And I hope this is a good way to do this. So the thing we're going to do here is window.add-event-listener. And it gets a couple things. The first thing is we're listening for an event that the browser will automatically fire off called DOM content loaded. That says, hey, the page, the HTML document is loaded. Once it's loaded, you can go run this code. And so I'm just going to call this root, and it's document.get element by ID. And we're going to look for a div or a span or something. We'll do a div with an ID of root. And once we have that, we're going to use this React DOM.render to load our React component into it. I might be wrong here, but I think we can just say main and import main from source/main. What is wrong? Let's see where the error is. Oh, so we're going to render main into the root element. Figure out what's going on here. Window.add-event-listener, DOM content loaded, blah. Root equals document.get element by ID. Maybe this one's double quotes? I don't know what the issue is. And then we're gonna, main/main. Sorry, silly little thing. In fact, here we don't even need that. We just put a slash at the end. Cool. So that's the beginning, and then we'll have our main thing here. So I'll do main import React. Come on, React. And also we're gonna, well, we'll just import React from React. And we'll just do that for now. Let's say class main extends React dot component. So React has a thing on it called component. And we could do it this way. We could also pull it in directly and just do extends component. Both are viable, valid. I think you always need to import React if it's a React component. So this is kind of optional. I don't care which way I do it. I like doing it whatever's just less text on the screen, and I think that's better. And then generally inside of a thing we have a constructor, and the constructor in this case doesn't, but in the future will have props passed in from a parent state. And in this case, just to show you, we're going to pass in some stuff here. We're going to use a hawk chain, higher order component, and a Redux store, and we're going to pass data into our application from here at the very top. So we'll come back to that, but just know that's why we're doing it, even though we're not using it right now. And then when you have props, you always super props, and honestly, I can't tell you why. That's just what you do. Class components have a state, and right now it's empty. And then we have a render function, which is the bare minimum required by a React component, and say, hello world. And this is as complex as we're going to make this until we get it running, and then we're going to build more on it. And then, of course, we can't forget to export default main. Cool. And we can't run this yet, but soon, very soon, we will. Okay, so that's the first step. Now we need to go back to our server. How do we get our server to connect to our React component? So the first thing we're going to do is go into our package.json, and we need to have a script to run our bundler. And in our server, we're also going to need a route that knows how to load the HTML document that's going to pull in our bundle. So we have a handful of things going on here at the same time. So I'm going to call this devpack, because it's the development webpack, and you can call it whatever you want. At the end of this, I mean, I wouldn't have these necessarily. I would just have like a start to just start the server without any bundling, and then I'll have a dev and a production. The dev will run the server in development mode and bundle and watch for changes and all that stuff, where the development one will just bundle a development package. So when you're in production, you would run start to start your server, and at some point you would have needed to run your production bundler to make the most recent bundle available in a production mode to the front end. So when we do a webpack, bundle, I'm looking up the thing here. We're just going to say webpack, watch for changes, and rebundle when it sees a change. And then we're going to pass in a configuration, and this is the webpack file. This is the path to the webpack configuration. We're going to put it in our pages blog folder. So this should say pages blog, and this is going to be our development bundle, so webpack.dev.js. So when we run this command, it's going to bundle our front end into a development bundle. So let's just, for simplicity, copy that. We'll go into our blog folder and create our webpack.dev.js file. All right, our webpack.dev file. So we're going to start off by importing webpack. And notice we're not using import statements because we're not in React technically. This is more of a back-end process. So Node runs the script and it does what it needs to do, bundle a package, or bundle a package and watch for changes and continue rebundling. So we're just going to use require statement. And it's just webpack. And const, we're going to do extract text plugin, require extract text webpack plugin. And I believe this is an npm module, npm install. I actually heard that this might come with webpack now, so I might not need to do this. And it gave me an error. Unable to resolve dependency tree. So webpack might actually already have this in it. We can double check that. If you've never looked at your node modules, this is where everything gets installed. When you install webpack, webpack also has its own dependencies here. And it has a mini CSS extract plugin, text. Well, we'll come back to this when it's a problem. So for now, we'll leave that out. I do think we're going to need it, though. Path equals require path. And I think we'll keep it like this for now. Okay, now, this file is going to export a configuration object that webpack expects. And that's all this is. It's just this object. So entry. There's Babel polyfill. Now that is something we're going to need to install. I think we also just need to install Babel. I'm not sure. Babel polyfill, and that gets a path.join. Now this is going to point to a JSX. This is our entry point into React. This is how when we bundle, it knows where the beginning of your React project is, and that is minimize, pages, blog. That's our index right here. This is where it starts, right? So it's in the same folder, so just say index.jsx. __ dir name is something populated automatically by Node, and it's the folder that you're in. It's the folder that this file is in currently. So we have the path, the absolute path, all the way up to this folder, and in this folder we're getting index.js. And that's just the way we do it, because it's supposed to be more secure. Now, when we bundle our file, we have an output. And here's where we specify what our output is going to be, and the main thing here is file name. Pages/blog, and we're going to have a public, we'll call it assets. No, we'll call it public. I think that's better than assets, and we're going to call it just blogbundle.js. That's where our bundle file is going to be saved. Now, the rest of the things we have here are just configuration options for Webpack. So we have an input for our React and an output that where we're going to save our bundle file. Let's go ahead here into blog and create a new folder called public. Here in the module, we're going to have rules. And rules is an array. And the first entry in the array is an object. And it's going to say test. And this is an array. And we're looking for any file name. This is a regular expression, which is why it starts with slash in the beginning and slash at the end and some stuff in the middle. And that'll do some automatic pattern matching. Looking for a literal dot, so we escape that dot and say JSX, question mark, $, anything that starts with JSX, comma, escape the dot, JS, and question mark, $. So file names that match that pattern, is going to be triggered here, but we are going to exclude, and this is very important, our node modules folder, because that stuff's already been processed and handled and whatever, so we're going to ignore that. Then we have a use section, and here we have loader. I'm going to use Babel loader. I don't think I'm spelling that correct. B-A-B-E-L - loader. And we need to have that in here as an npm package as well. So npm install Babel loader. And this is confusing, I know. I forgot these parentheses here. Use is an array, and it contains an object. This object is called loader. Here we have options for this particular loader. This is presets. It's an array. ES 2017, ES 2015, React. Now, if I'm not mistaken, we also need to install these. All right. So we're closing off the options. We're closing off the use. We have our array there and the rules. And so now we're going to have another rule. And this is going to test for CSS, our double slashes, escape, a period, CSS, $. And when we find a CSS file that we're going to include in our bundle, we're going to use style loader and CSS loader. Those also need to be installed. npm install. Hopefully by the time that we're done with all of this, you will be able to take this with just minimal routes, everything's set up so you can clone it and go in and add your routes. You won't have to touch anything in here unless you're coming back to, like, say you wanted to import an MP3 file. You'll have to find an MP3 loader so you can include the MP3 into the bundle and add this rule here, or other files. If you want to use a SAS or SCSS or less CSS precompiler language, you'll have to include those things here as well. Anything like that. Okay, so we're done with that. And we're going to close that off. So we're done with our module section. I'm going to use DevTool, source map. I'm not certain. I feel like I'm going to double check this while that's maybe installing. I want to double check that that is correct. Maybe not. We might not have needed to do that. Well, we'll remove it later, and if it doesn't hurt anything, it doesn't hurt anything. And these things would take time, right? It would take me a lot of time to go dive into that and find all the specifics of whether or not it's needed and how to do it. And I probably should and then do a follow-up video, but for the sake of time right now, we're going to skip over that. Okay. So DevTool, we have source map, and then we have resolve, extensions, .js, and .jsx. And then we have plugins. It's an array. And plugins, new webpack dot define plugin. That's snake case. env keys. And new extract text plugin. It's plugin.bundle.css. And then we have an extra little brace there. Okay, so let's see what happens when we run our, let's double check what it was, npm run devpack. It's asking me if I want to install webpack CLI, and I'm going to say yes. Cool. So we got an error. At least it's running, and it tells us what's going on. So it says env keys is not defined. Oh, that's because I didn't need that. Sorry about that. We can just take that out. Let's save that and run it again. Extract text plugin is not defined. So I'm pretty sure we need this. So I'm going to say webpack not defined. Except the is not defined. Sometimes when you get an error, it's nice to preface it with what your context you're working in, webpack, and then the exact error message in quotes. So it looks for this exact string. So we can look at some of these. Not a lot of options. All right, well, let's look at this one. So this looks pretty close to what we're looking at. And he's got lots of information about it. Okay, exactly the same for me. They're using Firebase, which could complicate things if you're not familiar with it. I'm not familiar with Firebase. I don't know how that would affect things. But this is part of a larger repository. Maybe we can click here. Go into source. Nope. We want to find their webpack config. Here it is. So what we're looking for in their code is, well, how did they bring in extract text plugin? And they have the same thing. There's an entry. There's an output. They have something extra. I don't know what version that works with, or if it will or won't work with us. We're not using strict, so some of these things we don't care about right now. We just want to get it running first, and then we can experiment with these changes. So the question is where does this come in? And it's not even on the page at all. Well, for now, let's just comment it out. Let's see what happens. See if we can get this running without an error, and we can always come back and add it later. And you know, to be honest, I might have needed this for something else I was doing in another project, so it might not be needed here. Okay, so mode has not been set. This is good so far. Let's address this warning first. The mode option has not been set. Webpack will fall back to protection for this. Set mode option in development or production to enable defaults for each environment. We can also set it to none. So I believe that when we run this from our package.json, we're going to be doing this in development mode, so we can pass this here. And we can say const node.env equals process.env, or, but actually we don't need to do that. I'm sorry, we don't need to do that at all. This will always be development, because this is our development webpack bundle. So we just need to add something in here called mode. Is there a mode in here? There's not. Webpack config mode. Where do we set this? Oh, high level. So we're just going to plop this here. Save it, kill this, run it again. Cool, now that warning went away. And granted, the last time that I wrote a custom Webpack thing was close to a decade ago. Well, 5, 6 years ago. And this is the newest version of Webpack, so there's probably a lot of changes that I'm not familiar with. So there's an error in my index.js, JSX. Unknown option presents checkout Babel core for more information. No idea what it's saying. We can see this is an issue with Babel loader though. All right. Well, let's check out this Babel core options. And then let's also look at our webpack file, because I think that's what it's referring to. Probably doesn't, it might not like one of these. The options object passed to the plugin. Oh, well, let's just do that. Let's just do .es6. No. So transpiling, extending this list isn't possible. However, Babel CLI support other extensions with extensions. See full option list here. ES 2015. Ah, I see the issue. I said presents, not presets. All right, we made our change, we saved it. Let's kill the server or the webpack bundler. Let's run it again, see what it says. We made one change and then we rebuild it. It might give us the same error, it might give us a different one. Cannot find package Babel preset ES 2017. Cool, let's install that because that's what it's looking for, and we specified 2017 here, so it probably wants it. So that's cool. So let's run our dev pack again and get the next error. Files are not allowed to export objects, only functions. Plugin. Presets. Oh, you know, there's nothing here. Let's just get rid of this for now. I think that's what it was saying. I was giving it an array, and it's like, I don't want this. Same error. So because this is not a JavaScript error, this is a configuration error with Webpack. It can't tell me necessarily what line the error is on. It's just telling me, hey, I got a configuration that doesn't work or is not what I expected. So we got to go figure out how to do it correctly. Plugin/preset files are not allowed to export objects, only functions. I wonder if it doesn't like that we're exporting an object here, and it wants a function. Let's see what Stack Overflow says. We might double check our package.json really quick. We don't have Babel core. Actually, I think all of these, well, he says this one. So Babel core we can install. I think we have the Babel CLI. Oh no, that was Webpack CLI we installed. Babel loader we have, right? Babel loader. I don't use Lodash. Plugin React Transform. What is that? Okay, let's see. And Babel preset React. That's probably going to make certain things a lot more convenient. Cool. Okay, so we're going to install these things. So Babel core, Babel CLI, at Babel/CLI, at Babel/core, Babel-plugin-react-transform, and at Babel/preset-react. Okay, those things all installed. Let's run this again, just see what happens. Cool. Same error. What version? Or 7. Babel CLI, Babel core. These are the latest ones because I didn't specify a version number, so these should generally be compatible. Some of them might not be. We might need to downgrade some. And it might be a while till we figure out what that is. Preset env. Let's go ahead and npm install at Babel/preset-env. Run it again just to see that nothing has changed. Cool. Plugin/preset. So, you know, there's nothing here called plugin, but there is something here in the options called presets. Is it supposed to be presets? Is it supposed to be preset? I think it's plural. Yeah. See webpack config. You know, maybe we don't need that one. Let's just try this. Because I don't know exactly what the error is telling me it doesn't like. And it could be something configuration related, but we'll see. It's a little bit different. Cannot find Babel presets 2015. So if you notice, when we run into errors, we're removing things, simplifying where the error could be. And here we're getting the same kind of error. So it's something to do with these presets. We don't use webpack anywhere else, huh? Yep. Okay. Might not even need to require this when we're done, but we'll see. Yeah, so latest webpack React ES 2017 config example. Sure. We'll look at this. Here we go. ES 2017. Can we just search for it? Nope. Babel precepts. So what's the area? This is in rules for JSX, and it's the Babel loader. So actually, latest webpack Babel loader. Here we go. What version of webpack? We have 5.7.5, so that might be a little bit different here. Oh, Oh, I see. So in our presets, instead of saying all of this other stuff, we might just be able to say, what was it called? React presets, and it was Babel preset React. Okay, we'll delete that, specify that there. All right, let's kill this and see what that does. Hey, hey, hey. Let's go look in our public folder. Nothing. Pages, blog, public, blog bundle, JS. Refresh. Oh, there it goes. Oh, it put it in a different location. Dist pages, blog, public. Okay, we want to change that. So I think what we're going to do here is use dir name plus pages react. Let's kill this and run it again. Invalid configuration object. Webpack has been initialized using configuration that does not match the API schema. A relative path is expected. However, I gave a full path, so it does want a relative path. So the relative path is from where we are here in the blog folder into the public folder. Okay, so let's run it again. And it should work. We should be able to then see it. It's putting it in this dist folder. That's very strange to me. I don't know why it's doing that. Let's run it again. It wants to put it in a dist folder. Let's say webpack output not in dist folder. Set folder output. Maybe there's some configuration option we need in there. But hey, we're making progress, right? We got it to bundle. Now we just need it to do the bundle the way we want, where we want. And that shouldn't be confusing or complicated. That should be really straightforward. We want .file name. Path asset info. This option determines the name of each bundle. Okay. All right. Different things. Just out of curiosity, maybe we can say .. to get out of the dist folder, and then go pages, blog, public, blog bundle. We're just experimenting here. Let's run it again. It created a dist folder, but it put it in the public folder. That's what we want. That's good enough for now. We'll figure out, I'll have to research off screen and find out how to not keep this dist folder, because I don't want it there. I want it here in this location. We have our bundle file. This is all of our entire React project in a bundle. And we have this map file. And this map file tells us how to map the bundle file to our actual file structures so that when we're in the browser, we can debug it a lot easier. And it's kind of as if we were working with it like we work with it in our IDE. All right, so we got our webpack file. We have a bundle. Great. Now we need to go back and we need to add another thing here. We want a route that's going to give us our page. And since all of these routes and these routes that we already have are in the /API, we're just going to have an app.use that is just the root folder. And we're going to put a route of our own. We're going to make another router that's going to be just for this blog React front end, and it's going to be at pages/blog/routes. And we're going to call this blog because it's our blog front end. We're going to put that there. We can simplify these. Since I'm not going to use them anywhere else, we can just drop these directly in here. So there we go. And it's important that this one is below this one. Otherwise, every request will hit this. And before we go over to our routes folder, what we're going to do is we're going to jump into I'm going to jump into our routers, grab our route. We're going to copy this. We're going to go here to blog, new folder, I'm sorry, not new folder, new file, routes.js, paste it here. We're going to get rid of our blog posts, and we're going to get rid of this return here. Now this route is going to be responsible for serving just the things that are necessary for our blog. And to make this a little more workable, I have a request and a response. Change this to /blog, move it up. So here, if the user comes to our page and goes to just whatever.com or localhost, we're going to detect that they're coming to this URL and direct them to the /blog URL. And we do that with res.redirect. And res.redirect just takes a URL. We're going to redirect to /blog. Cool. All right. So now, if we run our local host, it should redirect us. I'm not running the server, am I? So let's run our server. npm start. And here's our bundler. Later we'll merge these together so we can start the server and bundle at the same time. So we have our SQL connection and everything, and we have our bundle here. We refresh, and it should redirect us to /blog. But /blog doesn't have any routes yet. It just says nothing. So res.send home blog. Boom, there's our blog. All right, what's next? All right, I don't have much time left here. So, okay, so what are we going to do in our routes file? Well, there's a couple ways to do this. The main thing that we're going to do is when they request the /route, we're going to render I like using a JADE plugin. You could just send them an HTML file. An HTML file would just be as simple as having an HTML file in the directory and pointing to it here saying, go deliver the static file with the express.static keyword that we did in our last video. But instead, I think what we're going to do is a JADE plugin. So JADE plugins are cool. npm install, I think it's called Pug. Pug is a plugin that lets you do JADE plugins. I don't know why they name it that way, but we should now be able to say res.render and path.join, dir name, and view.jade. And then here in this folder, we're going to make a view.jade. All right. So what does our view.jade need to contain? We're going to say doc type HTML, head, title is my blog. Meta, was it char set equals UTF-8. Meta, and you can see already how this reflects HTML. It's just a little faster to write once you learn it. Content is width equals device width, initial, I don't know if I spelled that correctly, scale equals 1. Cool. And we can do meta for description. I'm sorry, I did this a little wrong. I think it's... It may or may not work with quotes. I think it... Well, we'll put it in quotes. I think that's the correct way to do it. Description, and the content is my blog. And we can just copy this, and the next one is author, and I'll just put my name. Okay. Now we're going to link, and this is where we could do a favicon, which we'll put in our public folder here in a second. So we'll do href equals, and we'll say it's going to be at /blog favicon. We'll probably do an SVG. Okay. Now we're going to do link for our CSS if we have any. Style sheet equals, I'm sorry, rel equals style sheet, and type equals text/CSS, and href equals /blog/style.css. So now in our public folder, if we create a new file called style.css, this will automatically be pulled into our JADE template as a CSS. So you can do custom CSS that way. There's other ways to bring in CSS, but this is a good way. If you use like Font Awesome or Bootstrap or anything, you would add these here as well. All right. The very important part we have to do is our bundle file. So our bundle file is located at blog/blog-bundle.js. And then I will do some default styling here. Style. And this is just to reset all the basic styles. I find this very helpful to remove the margins from everything and the padding from everything, because it just kind of like gives you a blank slate to start with your HTML or when you're doing your JSX. So you don't have to fiddle with CSS stuff too much. And then of course we're going to have our root, yeah, I think that's right, our root div, which is also going to have a margin of 0 pixels and padding of 0 pixels, so there's no margin around the page. All right, and then last thing we need to do is body. And hashtag root. And so when your bundle loads, it's going to overwrite this div. If JavaScript isn't running, we might just leave a message here that says, your page is loading. You should probably never see this. It goes so fast, it should, especially on localhost, you should never see this. But as soon as your bundle loads, this will go away. So we'll just leave a little message. Your page is loading. All right, so that's our JADE template. When we render this, which should turn into HTML. And so now we have our route that points to our JADE template. We should be able to refresh this here. Oh, path is not defined. I want to bring in const path equals require path. Can I find module JADE? Let me see what is going on there in my notes. Let's look at our package.json. Do we have a JADE? We don't. Let's npm install JADE. I thought Pug handled that, but maybe things have changed. All right. And we're going to have to, I think we set a view engine somewhere. I vaguely remember setting something called view engine. Give me a second here. Let's see if this. Let's see if this did it. It doesn't like my indentation. Line 18, unexpected token indent. Oh, maybe it just wants that and that and that and that. But probably keep that. Let's kill it and run it again. Still doesn't like it. And it doesn't like the semicolons that would appear. I've always done semicolons. Oh, you know what it is? There's a period here. Style type equals text CSS, and there's a period at the end. Your page is loading. Excellent. It's done everything except for load our bundle. So let's go back and see if we have any errors. Okay, unexpected token. We have our div with an ID of root. Let's look at network. Refresh the page. Network. Refresh the page. Failed to load response data, no content available because the request was redirected. Well, why would that be? If we're going to /blog bundle, our main file will say /blog goes to the routes file in our thing. Oh, we have a little problem. We forgot something. Not a big deal. We're going to do router.get, and we need to have our public folder and I realized I made a little error here, so we'll go back and fix that. But we're going to do our public folder, and then we do it's express.static, and we also need to express equals require express. All right, express.static and path.join and dir name and public. I think that's right. Now we have a little problem I just mentioned. We have this /public here, and that's a little tiny problem. So we're going to have to go here. It's going to be blogs/public. Like that. We need our /public here. Same with the favicon, and same with our style sheet. So it's all /blog/public/file name. So let's save that. I don't think we need to rebundle. We're just going to refresh our page. We should be able to say /blog/public /blog-bundle.js. It redirects us. Oh, we need to restart our server, which is should have done automatically. What's going on? We get our... Oh. Again, the order of the routes matters. This route got registered first. It needs to be registered second. Because /public, the slash matches this slash, and it runs this instead. So I think that's what it is. It skips it. Let's refresh here. Oops. /public/blog-bundle.js. Nope, still is redirecting. Something is redirecting us. We know our redirection here happened, but this routes file should have caught it before we get to that. Is there a slash? No, I don't think there's a slash there. Can we see response? Preview, headers. 302 found. It's redirecting us to /blog. I don't think it's working correctly. Well, let's comment that out. And let's comment out this. So we just have our /public, and we'll say blog/ we might just npm run webpack. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to split this, say npm run webpack. All right. I don't have to switch between those two no more. So what is happening? /public. Cannot get it. This can just be Express since we've now brought Express in. This can be const, this can be const. So what is going on there? And actually, we can shortcut this too. Put lowercase router there and add the parentheses at the end. That's a little cleaner. Now it's going to treat that as a function call like it's supposed to. dir name public. Let's try a /. So I don't think our router file is working correctly. I don't understand why. If we do that, and we just go to blog, it does catch this. Let's try it. Let's add index.html test. And if we go here, Okay, so there is something wrong with here. This is not working correctly as we want it to. Join dir name and public should give us our index file. Routes / public. Well, that's frustrating. Maybe we'll put it in single quotes. I don't know why that would change anything. Maybe it's looking for just /public. Express dot static path join directory name public. Express router serve static assets folder. Well, let's try it like that just to see what happens there. Let's look at serve static. And it's really frustrating sometimes when you know your code matches the documentation and it still doesn't want to work. No, we need to do blog bundle. Very strange. These are simple things. They shouldn't be broken. But this works. Let's take a closer look. App.use. Oh, we're not using app though. We're using the router. Let's look at this. This is the routes. Let me check something else over here on my side. This extra thing, redirect false. Sorry, I can't pause my video, but we'll wrap this up pretty quick. If I can't find an answer, we'll just stop here. Oh. Ha. .use. Router.use. There we go. Now we have our React Hello World. And we should be able to go to React public /blog bundle. There's our bundle. We can get rid of the test. Here's our style sheet. We can see if we go back here, hello world, everything looks good. Okay, so now we are in React land. All right, that was a lot. Okay, I spent so much time focused on that. I'm not really sure what to do next, so I think we're going to stop here. So the next step in the next video, what we're going to do is, actually, maybe we'll just take a moment to do it here. What we want to do is just show that we can pull in information into our component from our API. Let's just do something real simple, real quick, real dirty, and then we'll go from there. So what I want is when the component loads, I want to make a fetch request to my API and get data. I want it to say loading data. We'll move this. I want it to say loading data. And then once the data is loaded, I want it to say data. Our data is going to come from state, so we'll say this.state.data, let data equal this.state.data. And up here, we're going to have data equals an empty array. And then we'll have a loading is false. I'm going to come back to that later. So, okay, so component will mount. Now this is, they say, an older lifecycle function that's going to be deprecated. Maybe not this one. Some of the lifecycle functions are going to be deprecated. Of course, everyone's moving to functional components, so if we see those errors, don't worry about them. This is just how classes are done, and we can learn about functional components later. So when the component is about to mount, before its first render, we're going to do a fetch. And fetch basically allows you to make a call to a URL, basically. And there's some interesting things that happen as a result of this. So where are we going to fetch our data from? We're going to fetch our data from /API/posts. And we're going to pass some things here. The method, remember these are HTTP things. This is a GET request. For best practice, we're going to add credentials, same origin, and headers. We don't need any headers, and we're not doing a post request. We don't need anything up. All right, I have 2 seconds, and then I gotta go. Okay, so once we do our request, it automatically returns a process. We're gonna say .then, just like our other promise chains. We're gonna get our data, and we need to return. Sorry, we're not returning. We're going to use this.setState to set this in our this.state object. So we're going to say data, and because this comes in as a string, we're going to do data.json. Is it data.json? I think that's right. So when this fires off, it's going to set the data up here. And the first thing we're going to do is loading will be true by default. And when it sets the data, it'll say loading is false. And then we can go here and say loading. And if we'll use a ternary here, we'll say loading, it's true or false. If loading, we'll say data loading. Otherwise, we'll give our data. And that should do it. So let's make sure we're rebundled. I don't know if that rebundled or not. You saw it redid our server when we did this. It bundled. Now we refresh. And nothing happens. We've got issues. That's a warning. Objects are not valid as React children. Let's just take this out. We'll say display. Let display equal the JSX data loading. And then if loading, if not loading, yeah, something like that. Take off the let. What's the problem? Tell you what, let's console.log data.json. Refresh. Oh, data's a promise. Why? Data. What is going on there? That is very strange. Oh, I may have done this a little wrong. Sorry. My bad. We'll call this response, and we'll return response.json. And then here, we'll say let data. Is that right? Do we return from the fetch? Let's try it. And here it's just data. You can say data like that. The key is data and the value is the variable data. Or since they're the same, we can just do it like that. All right, let's refresh, see what happens. Promise pending. Very strange. All right, well, we'll come back to this. This is a good stopping point. Man, that really bothers me. These are simple things. Sometimes they're picky. All right, thanks for watching. The next one, we'll pick up right where we left off again. We'll get this doing something, and we'll start building out a page. We'll keep it simple, but I think what we want to do is now go back and do a production bundle, polish up our package.json, our scripts in particular, so we have like a nice server and development environment and a production environment running correctly. And we'll just see where we go from there. We'll probably spend some time in React looking at some different things. I want to explore kind of the fundamentals of React. I want to share with you how you should think of React. It's a stateful rendering engine, and so what that means is you want to build a page. How exactly do you think about building a page? Like architecting the tree of components and folders and organization, but then also like getting each thing to do what you want. So, oh, and then at some point here, we're going to also do Redux and Saga. So we'll talk about it at the beginning of the next video. Thanks for watching.